The following TGC program may not be rebroadcast or otherwise used without the express written consent of the Government Channel 5 or the City of Athens.
Welcome to Straightforward Conversation with Gary Hunter. My guest this evening is Dinah Adkins, Executive Director of the National Incubation Association. Dinah has been Executive Director of the National Business Incubation Association since 1988, and she oversees all activities of the 800-member organization. She's been invited to speak on topics relating to business incubation at conferences throughout the United States and in Ireland, Germany, Hungary, Israel, Mexico, Canada, and Australia. Quite an impressive resume, Dinah.
Well, thank you. It's been a lot of fun to go all those places anyway.
Glad to have you on the show tonight.
Thank you.
Tonight, Dinah, we want to talk about the National Business Incubation Association. As you said before the show started tonight, it's one of Athens' best-kept secrets.
Absolutely. I think there are very few people who know what we do or where we're located or that we're even in Athens. And I know that I have a lot of friends that I used to see 10 years or so ago who say, I never see you anymore. What are you doing now?
Just what is the National Business Incubation Association?
The association is a membership association, a national and actually even an international association of people who are involved in assisting startup companies, entrepreneurial companies, and business incubators, which are the programs that are our members, provide financial services and consulting and technology expertise and access to a resource network of people who can help startup companies. And they're located in universities, and they're sponsored by cities, and they're sponsored by neighborhood revitalization groups and local economic development organizations.
What if I don't have a sponsor, but I have an idea and I just want to start a business?
Then you would go see one of our members. And as a matter of fact, we have a website, which I can tell you about later, but you can actually call up our website on the World Wide Web or write us a letter and send us an envelope, and we'll send you a list of our members that are local, that are near you.
Has the National Business Incubation Association always been located in Athens?
Well, actually, there was a previous executive director, and the association was started in 1985, so it's a new organization. If you look at the American Bar Association, for example, Gary, or the American Medical Association, our group is very, very new. The whole concept of business incubation didn't even come into existence until about 1980 or so. But we did start up basically in Pennsylvania. We had our first office there, but after a period of only a couple years, the organization moved to Athens, Ohio.
Why?
Why? Well, actually, the truth is that it was a very young industry at the time. There were not very many business incubators around the country, and there was one of the early ones was located right here, the Innovation Center in Athens, and I was the manager of that center for a while. So a lot of the people in Athens only remember me from back then, you know, when I was involved with the university at that point. But the organization, when it moved to Athens, consisted of 28 boxes of files and $275, so it was real easy to move here.
So Ohio University then played a key role in the movement of the organization to Athens?
Ohio University has played a seminal role in this organization. In fact, we would say that Ohio University is our first major institutional sponsor. And what I mean by that was that the university, when this organization was very small and had no assets and had few members and had no prestige, the university said, this is a great opportunity for us. We think that this is going to become something. And so they sort of took us on. And as the incubator manager at that time, I decided to incubate the association as well as the incubator. And the organization moved into our headquarters, and we provided assistance to it, and we've grown it. And now it's not a huge organization, but it's only a little over 10, 12 years old, and we have about 12 employees on staff and 7 or so student interns, and we have a lot of good relations with the university.
So you're the National Business Incubation Association really was incubated here.
It was nothing. It was really, I mean, you know, $275 and 28 boxes of files. I mean, I didn't even get a Rolodex.
It was an idea waiting to happen.
Yeah, it was an idea waiting to happen. And I have a lot of respect for the people who started things out, you know, because I can imagine what it was like when there were only 40 members. And there were certainly more people than that involved when I got started. But we really had a little cash flow and no assets. And it was a lot of fun. It was a great risk. And it was really an entrepreneurial kind of thing to do, you know.
How do you go about organizing an organization from the ground up?
Well, I had to learn that myself, actually, but I did join some other groups that are involved in association management, and I knew because I was involved in this industry very early on that we really needed good information about what it takes to support growing businesses and entrepreneurial companies, and so we needed a newsletter. We needed a good newsletter, and we needed publications, and we needed research. We needed things that would give credibility and really understand what it was that we were doing. People talked about business incubation, but they didn't really know what was going on inside this program. I mean, how do you really bring those resources to bear to help startup companies? So we tried to really look at that process and say, what are the elements of that process? What are people doing? What are the new techniques and strategies that people are using for financing? What are the new techniques and strategy that people are using to build management teams for companies? What can we do to help companies assess technology and determine whether this is a marketable technology or not? So that's what we got involved in doing, and we've done training, publications, conferences, training institutes, research. We have a clearinghouse for information in our offices so that people can call in and say, you know, how do you do this? How do you develop a business incubator? How do you run it? And how do you provide various kinds of business assistance service to your clients?
Very good. We're going to be back after this commercial break, and when we do, Dinah and I are going to talk more about how they determined there was a need for small businesses in this country. And we're going to take a little tour of the National Business Incubation Association. Welcome back to Straightforward Conversation. My guest this evening is Dinah Adkins, Executive Director of the National Business Incubation Association. Dinah, before we went to that break, I indicated we were going to talk about some needs assessment, or why are small businesses needing services of incubation. When I think business, I normally think huge conglomerates, millions, billions of dollars to start. Is there really a need for the mom-and-pop organization in the United States today?
Well, I think there are a number of ways to answer your question. I think, for one thing, the atmosphere for business has really changed, Gary. I mean, when our parents grew up, everybody worked for wanted jobs with, either they were trying to get a job on a farm, or they wanted a job with Ford or with GM or some other big corporation, okay? And then there were people in small towns who worked for sort of mom and pop businesses. But there wasn't a lot of interest in entrepreneurship. People didn't feel that this was something that they needed to do and that they could be successful at. And not only that, but a lot of people sought security by working for a large firm, and they wanted to work there for a long time. So the fact of the matter was that until at least the 1970s, everybody who thought about business thought about international conglomerates and companies that were going to be huge, and international fruit, and people who would, you know, sell overseas and all that stuff. And small business got no respect at all, no respect. But a number of things happened in the 1980s. Large business really started downsizing at a pretty spectacular rate, actually beginning probably about 1970. And then, in addition to that, small companies started growing. And that was because people were interested in having more autonomy, and a lot of employees, or the workforce, was better educated, and they wanted to, you know, that was the 1970s generation and all, we wanted to have control of our destiny, and we wanted to have autonomy, and if it wasn't
no one
fun,
tell us what to do.
If it wasn't fun, then phooey, you know, and we didn't want to be a cog in the wheel. And so that was important. And in the 1980s, in the early 80s, a professor at MIT, Dr. David Birch, did some research and discovered that small business were actually the huge contributors to the economy, that they created more jobs than big businesses, that they created more innovations, that they were more effective per dollar investment and per employee than big corporations. And at the same time that all this was happening, the economy really changed, and a lot of the big old line industries based on manufacturing of washing machines or whatever restructured and downsized, and a lot of employment went overseas and went to the Sun Belt, and and went to Taiwan and other places. So all of these things were happening at the same time, and at the same time that big companies were downsizing, small companies were growing, and there were more small companies. And as we have new technology and new information systems in the world, and as the economy has become more global, the fact is there have become more market niches for small companies. So you don't just get a car that's black and that's a Ford anymore, but you can get all of these different kinds, and you can get all different kinds. I mean, you can buy clothes that you absolutely find of interest, and you can get software and computers, and everything is customized. Well, I know I'm wandering here, but to make a long story short, what this means is that people have more opportunities to get exactly what they want and to satisfy individual needs, and there are more opportunities for small companies.
Do you think we're more of an individualistic society?
Oh, I think there's no question about that. And things like the internet and the global economy, I mean, you can sell, Gary, if you're in business today and you want to, you can sell to a guy in the Ukraine. 30 years ago, you had to be United Fruit to sell overseas. I mean, this is a really mind-blowing thing. And in the last, say, 17, 20 years, the share of the U.S. employment base that works for the Fortune 500 has decreased from 20% of the employment base to less than 10% of the employment base. And people go to business school now, not because they want to work for GM, but because they want to learn to start and grow their own business.
Do you think the interest we hear in people being able to work at home has created this?
That is one of the trends. There are a number of trends that have assisted this, and certainly I would say that technology and communications and transportation have been major things, and certainly education and all of that. But absolutely, technology allows you to work at home and use your Microsoft programs or whatever, and via the internet, put up your web page and sell your product to that fellow in the Ukraine.
And look just like GM.
And look like you are GM. Exactly, that's exactly the case, because we don't necessarily have to have a lot of high-priced people to design our brochures and to do our web page and to manage our fulfillment operations and all the rest of it. And we, Gary, are a good example of that, because we're a national association that serves a national and an international audience. We work with our members here from Athens, Ohio, and they're located all over the world, and yet we can provide answers to their questions and fill their needs by email and fax and our website and mail and everything else.
I want you to, I don't think very many people in Athens really know where the National Business Incubation Association is located. I know it's on the ridges, so take us on a little tour there. Describe where it is, what your office setup is, etc.
Well, we're still a small group, but we're up on the ridges, and we love being up there, and we're near the Kennedy Museum. We're in Building 19, which you go up there to the front of the building and see that wedding cake sort of structure. That's the old Kennedy Museum, and we're up there located next to that. And we have a number of offices. We've gradually expanded our operations, and it's just an office setting. That's really what it is, because again, we do provide services. We're an information organization, so we don't do manufacturing or anything like that. We provide information.
Is your office divided into an area for publications,
right,
for research?
Right. Well, just like other national associations, but there are differences among those kinds of organizations. We do a lot of publications. We have monthly newsletters of different kinds. We have a whole book catalog and publishing arm. We do research reports and manuals about how to develop incubators and how to manage them and how to serve startup companies. We have a training program, conferences and training institutes. We have a clearinghouse for information in our office so that if you call us, you're a member of our organization, or for some other reason you call us for information, we go into our files and we pull out abstracts and we try to answer your questions. Our job really is to share information among our members so that the people who are doing the most exciting things and the most innovative things and the most worthwhile and useful things, we can get that information out to other members, maybe who are just starting up, and they don't have to recreate the wheel.
Very interesting. Stay tuned. Dinah and I will return after this commercial break, and we'll talk about some success stories both on the local level and the national and potentially the international level. Welcome back to Straightforward Conversation. My guest this evening is Dinah Adkins, Executive Director of the National Business Incubation Association. Dinah, before that break, I indicated we were probably going to talk about some success stories, but I'm going to change my mind right off the bat and tell you that during that break we were talking a little bit about the conferences and the great success that you've had in organizing conferences that have been attended by, I believe, both some national and international people. So tell us about the conferences first.
Well, real briefly, I'll let you know that we've just come back from our 12th International Conference in Philadelphia, and that was actually the site of our first conference in 1987, so it was really fun to go back there. And we did some special things like honor industry founders, people who were really pioneers in the industry a few years ago, and it was great for me because I know all those people. It was such an extraordinary experience to be involved in something when it was just starting. But we had over 500 attendees in the main conference and another 90 or so at a special pre-conference that we did that was separate. And we had 44 states represented and 36 nations and territories and 7 Canadian provinces.
Wow.
And the fact of the matter was, Gary, that about a quarter of the conference attendees came from all over the world. And what I find really exciting is that people from all over the world look at the United States and our organization as the model for entrepreneurship support. And it's amazing, we had people from Macedonia and Croatia and Belarus and Ukraine and Russia and Bulgaria and Romania and all Poland and all these Eastern Bloc, former Soviet Bloc countries that are looking to develop free market economies. And we had people from the People's Republic of China and Kuwait, and it's just, and then we had lots of other places too that you would expect, like Australia and United Kingdom and so forth, and Egypt. But I think what's really amazing to me is to see the growth in interest in free market economies and entrepreneurship on the part of all of those parts of the world that previously were socialist or, had very command economies.
Well, that brings up one obvious question, and that is, how many languages do you have your conference in?
No, actually, to tell you the truth, that's really easy for me, because at one point I had a member say, "Oh, I think, Dinah, we should grow up and that we should start, translating." And I said, "Into what?" Into what? If you have 36 nations and territories represented at your conference, the fact of the matter is that for most of the world, English is the lingua franca. English is the international language. If you're a pilot and you're traveling around the world, you have to speak English to talk to the controllers. So we're very lucky that we grew up in the United States and that we have that heritage and an English-speaking background.
So you find they not only speak English, are able to read it well enough to
there's a lot of variety. We had people on a study tour this year from Bulgaria and Romania, and there is no question that with some of those people it's a more difficult stretch. But nevertheless, I'm sure that they did pick up some very useful information, and part of that was because on that particular study tour there were other people who would speak a little better or understand a little more, and so they could serve as translators.
Have you ever taken your conferences out of the continental United States?
No, we have not. Now, I've attended, in those speaking engagements you were talking about, a lot of those, I've gone to conferences all over the world, and including Hungary, but we've not taken our conference out. And the reason really is that our core membership is U.S. And so we can't expect the people from Anniston, Alabama and Richland, Washington to travel to France. We don't have that group yet.
How do you publicize your conferences to a Poland or a Hungary or a Croatia that's in the midst of a war?
It's a funny thing, Gary, but we're a small association. but we're the largest group of our kind in the world. And so when I say that we're the best kept secret in Athens, I mean that sincerely. We are a very well kept secret, but we're the largest association of our kind in the world. And people call us and they want to come and see us from Korea and from Japan. And we've hosted, you know, people from all of these countries. So it's actually not so hard for us because word of mouth, we have a catalog of publications and it's all available on the internet. We have a website that has our conferences and our publications and information about our services, and it's the biggest one in the world. And we're also linked to all the other people who do this kind of thing. So I think longevity, the fact that we've been around for a while, we certainly do mailings overseas and all of the rest of it, but we're connected. And it really is a global economy now, and that works for us too.
So you do some mailings overseas, but mostly,
absolutely.
You think it's mostly word of mouth? Or
We
by
do
the
a lot
internet?
of word of mouth, we do a lot of internet, we do email. I mean, we are so blessed. I remember 10 years ago when I became executive director of this association and people would give us a call from Japan or Australia, and it was like impossible to communicate by telephone, and mostly it was impossible to communicate by fax because the phone lines were so bad, and mail took 3 months, and we really couldn't.
And cost an arm and a
Yeah,
leg.
and it cost an arm and a leg, and we couldn't send books, you know, because that was way too expensive. And if it was some weird place that was undergoing real changes, I mean, those things might be stolen and put into the black market. You could never guarantee anything would arrive. And so it was very difficult to serve those members, and that's just simply not the case anymore, because it's amazing how many people are gaining access to the internet and to email and so forth. And you can send virtually anything electronically now.
Tick off for me as many of the sites you can think of that you had conferences in. There's 12
Well,
locations.
I know them all, Gary.
Oh, okay.
So,
Can you name them all,
Yeah,
then?
absolutely. Philadelphia, Dallas, Pittsburgh, Denver, Charlotte, North Carolina, Austin, Texas, Milwaukee, Buffalo, New Orleans, Scottsdale, Arizona, Milwaukee again, and Philadelphia. I think I've covered them all.
So you've kind of moved back and forth across the United States.
Yeah, and we'd like to do more movement out west, but the fact of the matter is that right now there's a lot of incubator development in the western states, but it really originated with all those problems of restructuring of the old line industries and people moving to the Sun Belt and so forth. And so it really started in the Rust Belt, right here in Ohio and Michigan and Pennsylvania and New York.
This is where it's at then.
This is where it was happening. This is where it's still happening.
Well, on that note then, give me some success stories. Let's start locally. Is there any
Well-
local success stories that you can think
Well,
of?
certainly locally, I'd be very interested in talking about electronic vision, and I don't get to keep up with those fellows, but they're right here in Athens. That was a company that came into the Innovation Center when I was the manager of the Innovation Center here, and they've become successful. They bought property down on the old train right away.
The Athens
and
station
built
area.
a building right down there next to Sylvia's, and have had 50 or so employees down there and do wonderful work involved in interactive video and a lot of different things. And so I don't keep up with them.
High-tech technology.
Yeah, that was certainly high tech when they started, and they're still doing, I think, really interesting stuff there, and they're probably, you know, pushing the edge of that envelope, whatever it is, right now. We also had companies like Diagnostic Hybrids, which is still here in town also, and hires people and is doing some interesting things. And I don't know if anybody remembers this, but there was a company called the Children's Journal, which afterwards became the Parents' Journal, and it's a public broadcasting show that appears on NPR, National Public Radio. Bobby Renz is the person who's on that show, and they still carry it on WOUB. And then in addition, and she, by the way, started that show on her dining room table, and then she moved into the incubator. So, and then also I would like to bring up, for example, Athens Technical Specialists, which is a company here in Athens. They're still located up on the ridges, but they're building a new building and moving out toward Albany. And we're real excited. I mean, they've been a very steady growth company for this area. So locally, I think we've got some good ones.
Well, Dinah, our time is winding down, but I think the message is if you've got an idea for a business, come and see you, right?
Well, absolutely. Come and see us, and we'll put you in touch with our members, and they're located all over the United States and all over the world.
Thank you, Dinah. This has been Straightforward Conversation with Garry Hunter. My guest this evening has been Dinah Adkins, Executive Director of the National Business Incubation Association. Good evening.